Tonight, we are talking about a moment that changes everything, a moment that will be written about in history books for decades to come. Tonight, the impossible happened. We start with a strike that the Kremlin, the very heart of Russian power, had promised its people could never happen. They said it was a fantasy, they said it was a lie, but it was real. Western spy agencies watched it all unfold in real time. Ukrainian special forces carried it out with a precision that was not just perfect, it was almost holy. Think about where this happened. This wasn't some distant battlefield. This wasn't a village near the border. This was the heart of the beast. It was Moscow itself. It happened right there within the shadow of the Kremlin walls where Putin lives and works. A single, terrifying night. A night that brought fire and chaos to the Russian capital. A single night that completely destroyed the image of strength that Vladimir Putin has built for himself. He was forced to say a word he has avoided, hidden, and refused to speak for 3 long years of war. That word was losses. Tonight, Ukraine sent a message that everyone understood. No part of Russia is safe. No wall is too high. No distance is too great. The war is no longer just happening over there. The line has been crossed. The rules have been broken. And when the smoke finally cleared, Putin did not act like the strong leader he pretends to be. He didn't threaten to use nuclear weapons. He didn't promise to crush Ukraine in revenge. Instead, he stood in front of the cameras, looking weak, looking defeated. And for the first time since this war began, he admitted the truth. He confessed that Russia was hurting. Russia was suffering losses. Ukraine hit them with the kind of cold, hard intelligence that should make every Russian official wake up in a cold sweat. The message was loud and clear, echoing through the halls of power. The war is now going to be fought on our terms, not yours. This strike was a masterpiece of planning. It showed that Ukraine knows more than Russia thinks. It showed that Ukraine can reach out and touch the very people who thought they were untouchable. It was a complete humiliation for the Russian military and intelligence services. The world watched as the great, powerful Russian state was shown to be vulnerable, exposed, and completely unprepared for this level of attack. This is not just a military event. It is a political earthquake. For many weeks, the signs were there. They weren't official press releases. They weren't public military announcements. They were just the quiet whispers, the small clues that Kyiv was getting ready for something huge. Ukraine has always been aggressive with its strikes on Russian territory. That's true, but their attacks were always carefully planned. They followed a pattern. They hit military targets like oil refineries, weapons depots, and airfields. They avoided hitting Moscow directly, following a kind of unwritten rule. All those targets were legitimate. All of them were outside the capital. But this week, that pattern broke. It completely fell apart. The intelligence officers whose job it is to watch Ukraine's drone and missile capabilities saw the warning signs. They knew something big was coming. What did they see? A sudden, blinding increase in spy flights over the western part of Russia. It was like Ukraine was mapping every inch of the ground. Frantic, unusual testing of new long-range weapon systems near the Ukrainian border. They were practicing. They were getting ready. The complete, unexplained disappearance of Ukraine's most skilled special operations units. They vanished from their usual bases. They went off the grid. And then, the most chilling sign of all, silence. The spy networks, the communication channels that had been buzzing with activity for months, went completely dark about 72 hours before the strike. When Ukraine's best soldiers and spies go silent, it means they are preparing the extraordinary. It means they are planning something that cannot be detected, something designed to hit the absolute core of Russian power. Imagine the tension in the Kremlin in those final hours. The intelligence reports piling up. We've lost contact with unit. Satellite images show unusual activity near the launch zones. The air is too quiet. They knew something was coming, but they didn't know where or how big. They were paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. They thought their defenses were perfect. They thought their capital was a fortress. They were wrong. The silence was not peace. It was the sound of a spring being coiled, ready to strike. This period of quiet was the most dangerous time for Russia, and they completely failed to understand the threat. They were blinded by their own arrogance, believing that Ukraine would never dare to attack the capital. That mistake cost them everything. The clock struck 03:15 Moscow time. The residents of central Moscow were violently woken up by multiple massive explosions, the kind of explosions that shake the ground and shatter windows. Within minutes, the whole world saw the proof, videos flooding social media showing fires burning just a mile or so from Red Square. This was not an accident. Let's be clear, this was not a cheap drone that got lost and crashed. This was a surgical execution. It was a targeted operation, the kind Ukraine only uses when they want to send one final, powerful message to the Russian leaders. We can reach you. We know exactly where your power centers are, and we will destroy them whenever we choose. When the news first broke, Western military experts tried to downplay it. They called it a symbolic strike. They said it was dramatic, but wouldn't cause much real damage. They were dead wrong. Within hours, they completely changed their minds. Ukraine had hit at least 3 absolutely critical targets right inside the Kremlin district. They hit the Military Coordination Center, the place where the war is actually run, which was hidden inside a normal-looking civilian building. They hit the secret communications relay that connects Putin to his commanders on the front lines. When a country at war shows the world that it can hit the enemy's military brain inside their capital, right where the leader lives, the psychological damage is total. It's not about the buildings, it's about the feeling of safety. That feeling is now gone. Imagine the scene, the chaos, the sirens, the military scrambling, but they were too late. The damage was done. The targets were chosen not for their size, but for their importance. Hitting a communications hub means the commanders can't talk to each other. Hitting the coordination center means the war machine stops moving. This was a direct attack on Russia's ability to fight the war. It was a checkmate move. The strike was a physical blow, yes, but it was 1,000 times more powerful as a message. It said, we are smarter than you, we are faster than you, and we are inside your walls. The initial shock quickly turned into deep, burning fear among the Russian elite. They realized that their security guarantees were worthless. The response from the Kremlin tonight was not what anyone expected. It wasn't the usual tough talk. It wasn't threats of revenge. It was pure, unadulterated panic. Vladimir Putin, in a speech that looked rushed and unplanned, called the strikes provocative. He called them escalatory. And then came the confession. He admitted losses. This is a word that has been completely banned from Russian state media for 3 years. He had to say it. He had no choice. But the admission of losses is only the start of the story. It's the evidence of a system that is completely breaking down. Here is the proof of the disarray inside the Russian government. Highest alert status. Within hours of the attack, the air defense systems around Moscow were put on their highest alert status. They haven't been this scared since the very first days of the war. They are terrified of a follow-up strike. Emergency protocols. The entire capital was locked down. Emergency security rules were put in place. The city was paralyzed, waiting for the next blow. Media silence. The Russian state media, the giant machine that usually spins every bad event into a victory, went completely silent for over 4 hours. They had no script. They had no lie ready. They were waiting for orders that never came. That silence is the loudest sound in this war. It is the sound of a powerful system failing. Ukraine didn't just hit Moscow. They showed the world that they have total intelligence penetration. They proved they know all the secrets. They knew where the hidden military buildings were. They knew how the operations worked. They hit them with a precision that was designed to cause the least harm to civilians, but the maximum strategic terror to the leaders. The myth of the impenetrable capital is shattered. It's gone forever. The Russian people were told they were safe. They were told their leaders were protected. Tonight, they learned that was a lie. The feeling of safety is a weapon, and Ukraine just took it away from the Kremlin. This is a deeper wound than any bomb could inflict. It makes every Russian official wonder, what else does Ukraine know? Who is the spy among us? Am I next? The fear is now internal, and that is the most dangerous kind of fear for a dictatorship. The trust between the leader and the security services is broken. This strike was not just about military targets. It was a direct attack on the Russian mind. It was designed to destroy one critical idea in the Russian strategy: the belief that Moscow was a sanctuary. For 3 years, the people of Moscow lived a normal life. They went to work, they went to restaurants, they watched TV, all while their military was destroying Ukrainian cities. This difference, the war being far away, was the most important part of Putin's plan to keep his own people calm. The war was happening somewhere else. Tonight, Ukraine brought the war home. Fires burning right next to the Kremlin, explosions loud enough to hear in the city center. The cost of the war is no longer something you read about in a newspaper. It is real. It is happening on their doorstep. Military experts talking to Western media are saying that Russia's security feeling is now completely shattered. They are forced to face a reality they always said was impossible. One former spy put it in the simplest terms: Ukraine didn't just hit buildings tonight, they hit the myth that Putin could protect his own capital. This is a brilliant move in the psychological war. It tells the average Russian citizen that the war has consequences for them too. It tells the Russian officials that nowhere is truly safe, not even their fancy offices. And it sends a clear personal message to Putin: your walls cannot protect you. The impact on the Russian public cannot be overstated. For years, state TV has shown a picture of a strong, victorious Russia, with the war being a small, successful operation far away. Now, the reality is on their screens, filmed by their neighbors. This creates a massive crack in the government's control over the information. People will start asking questions. They will start doubting, and doubt is the biggest enemy of a dictator. This single strike has done more to undermine Putin's domestic support than months of sanctions. It forces the Russian people to finally confront the reality of the war their country started. The feeling of safety is a luxury they no longer have. This was not just a drone attack. This was a coordinated, multi-domain operation. It was a masterpiece of modern warfare. How did they do it? Air defense failure? Long-range Ukrainian weapons flew right through Russian airspace, using paths that Moscow's famous S-400 missile systems failed to cover. The S-400s, which Russia claims are the best in the world, were useless. They were too slow, too focused on the wrong direction. Cyber attack. Ukrainian cyber units crippled Moscow's emergency communication systems for a crucial 30 minutes. This delay meant the military couldn't talk to each other, couldn't coordinate a defense, and couldn't respond quickly. Intelligence drop. Ukrainian intelligence released the exact coordinates of their targets after the strike. This proved they knew exactly what they were hitting and why. It was a final slap in the face to Russian security. This was Ukraine showing the world that they have military capabilities that Russia never believed they had. And this strike comes at the worst possible time for Putin. He is facing huge pressure from all sides. Military commanders. They are screaming for more men and more equipment for a war that is eating up resources too fast. Oligarchs. The rich businessmen want the sanctions to end because their fortunes are being destroyed. Security officials, they want answers. How did this happen? Who failed? Who is the spy? The public. They are waking up to the reality of their city burning. Putin is trying to balance all these impossible demands. His image of strength is crumbling under the weight of this failure. And when leaders are publicly humiliated like this, they rarely act calmly. They act out of desperation. They act from wounded pride. They respond with a massive escalation, trying to look strong again. NATO's statement tonight was very careful. They supported Ukraine's right to hit military targets, but they also gave a strong warning to Russia against a disproportionate revenge. The fact that Ukraine hit military command centers and not civilian homes is important under international law. It shows Ukraine is fighting by rules that Russia has repeatedly broken. NATO is trying to manage the situation, but they are also preparing for the worst. They know a cornered animal is the most dangerous. President Zelensky's speech to his nation was calm, but his words were like iron. He said, "Russia believed their capital was beyond our reach. Tonight we proved them wrong," he said. "Every military target that helps the occupation of our land is a legitimate target. Distance does not make you safe." And he finished with this powerful statement: "We did not start this war, but we will take it wherever necessary to end it." These are the words of a leader who knows the true size of what Ukraine has just done. This strike was not a one-off event. It was part of a bigger plan. This is a new phase of the war. What we are watching now is a battle of stories. Russia wants to keep telling the lie that the war has no effect on its people. Ukraine wants to prove that lie is over. NATO wants to keep things from spinning out of control while still supporting Ukraine. And the world wants to know, is this the turning point? The facts are clear. They are absolute. 1. Ukraine reached the Russian capital with deadly precision. 2. Putin was forced to admit losses in public for the first time. 3. Moscow's image of being untouchable is gone forever. What happens next is being decided in the Kremlin right now. The fate of the war hangs on Putin's next move. Will he escalate? Will he finally realize the cost is too high? But Ukraine has already won the most important battle, the battle of perception. They have proven they can strike whenever and wherever they choose. And tonight, for the first time since this war began, Moscow is afraid. Not the soldiers on the front lines, not the people in the occupied territories. Moscow itself. Because tonight, Ukraine taught Russia a lesson they will never, ever forget. This war has no safe zones. The war just changed forever. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see what the next chapter holds. But one thing is certain, the old rules are gone. The new rules are being written in the ashes of the Kremlin district. This is the moment the war came home, and it will never be the same. The fear is real. The losses are real. And the end of the war is now closer, but perhaps more dangerous than ever before. This is the new reality. This is the new war. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. If you like this video, then do subscribe to us for future updates.